So when I started seeing consistently that the performance for children from my community were consistently beneath other communities, I didn't see that as a reflection on my community's potential. I saw it as a reflection on the education system, and I saw that this must be social engineering.
Hello, thank you for joining Falling for Learning podcast. I am TD Blenau. I'm a veteran educator who's worked in several different roles in a large public school district. I've worked as an elementary, middle school, and high school teacher, as well as an instructional coach for individual schools, such as elementary schools, high schools, as well as worked under the directors or the principal's supervisors as an instructional advisor for English language arts for 39 schools, and then later for 20 schools supervised by a particular administrator. So I have extensive experience with working with schools and teachers and students from pre-kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. And so as a parent, coupled with my experience as a parent, I have extensive knowledge in how to make sure that students are prepared for the next level and that they are on track for learning and to stay on track for success.
So Jelani, if I could turn to you for a moment, what is your ultimate goal for this program? And then in 5 years, what do you want your program to have done? Or, what do you see for the future and how you're growing it?
So our ultimate goal through our parent nonprofit, BITRIC, is to spread these math systems and methods throughout the entire world and improving overall education to encourage more people to get into STEM fields. Because like Nkosi was alluding to earlier, we have an infrastructure epidemic here in the United States where we have a C- grading on our overall infrastructure. And from an official infrastructure monitoring board, I forgot the exact name of it, but we have a water main that breaks every 2 minutes. 50% of the water lines in the country need repair. Roads are falling apart, and it's starting to come back and affect the everyday, you and me, everyday citizens of the United States. And the solution to that problem is really just making more engineers and architects and people who can work in infrastructure. And the thing that you use the most in any of those fields is math. So when you have 93% of Americans who have some form of math anxiety, and then they pass that on to their children, it puts your entire country at risk. So that's our goal. That's our ultimate goal, is to spread this throughout the world and throughout the country so that we can improve people's relationship with math, so that we can continue to innovate and build as we have to get to where we are now. Now, as for where we plan on being in 5 years, we're actually at the moment working with AIA to make to make continuous education training for...
What's AIA?
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Good question, Nkosi.
AIA is the Architecture Institute of America. So in order to become a licensed architect, you have to pass through several organizations, and the AIA is kind of like the home body for architects where they can congregate and find resources. So we're working on providing training to them and getting more resources in the hands of these architecture students and professionals so that they can bring that information from the workplace back into the classroom as professors, or vice versa, so that we can start to implement these methods and make the math easier to understand and tear down these barriers of entry of math anxiety and math phobia, so that more people can enter these industries and thrive in them, so that we can improve our infrastructure and make an overall better country for all of us. So
excellent. Okay.
And the other thing I want to close with this, because I hope I ain't rubbing people the wrong way and ruffle some feathers. It's just that, and I'm speaking mostly to men. So if I'm coming off a little abrasive, I'm speaking mostly to men, because it is very important that men be responsible for their community. It's very important that men take ownership and accountability as their position as fathers and husbands. So when I'm looking at the same abysmal outcome for decades, the achievement gap is 50 years old, okay? If I'm looking at that same outcome for decades, to me, it's a lack of ownership of responsibility.
Absolutely. You shut off right then. So I do agree. And I also want to point out that the achievement gap is 50 years because that's how long they've been tracking it. But of course, it is something that is baked in to the American education system, right?
Yeah,
they didn't set up the schools for certain groups to achieve. They set it up so they could be workers, right? And to be servants for certain groups of people. So it's baked in. Go ahead.
Let me chime in on that. So from my research, I agree with you that it's baked in. But the reality is that the Brown versus the Board of Education was started in 1950, was passed in 1954. Mm-hmm. A Civil Rights Act was signed into law, I believe, in 1964, which is 10 years later. So if we go back, the achievement gap started with integration. Okay, it started shortly after integration in the 1970s. Prior to the achievement gaps, African Americans were the best mathematicians in the country because we were responsible for using it to build the infrastructure. So if you live in New York City, African Americans from 1619 to 1964 used incredible advancements in mathematics to build New York City, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. It's when we stopped utilizing the math systems that we had used since antiquity to build the infrastructure of the United States of America, and we start aspiring to become standardized, or the greatest measure of excellence in education was from college institutions. Then we started getting rid of the ancestral knowledge that we had gotten from generation to generation to generation, and we traded that in for, a dance across the stage, a piece of paper, and a family dinner at Red Lobster. That became, we no longer use education. We started wanting certification and validation.
I really like that you said that. Sorry, go ahead.
African Americans were very proficient in mathematics for centuries here in the United States of America, until we changed our measure with math attainment should be. And we changed it from build a great quality of life to get a college degree. So now that's the measure. So we have children getting college degrees, but they're horrible in math. So again, that's why I get so, and forgive me if my energy is very passionate, but because again, it's like, if you have a protectorate of a community, when you see things happening to your community that are detrimental, it's your responsibility to speak against it. It's your responsibility to stand against it. So the negative outcomes that are in our community are being allowed to happen. They're not being confronted. That's why I seem extremely confrontational right now, because I'm confronting a problem.
Yes.
Okay. So
and this is, we have the same, I'm passionate about this. Parents need to know, because that's why I got into this podcast, because parents are, they're entrusting the education to someone else. They look up, they're surprised. Oh, he's failing. Why is he failing? But of course I haven't looked at the homework. I asked my kid, are you done with your homework yet? And then, I go on about my business. They go about their business. And then I'm surprised at the end of the semester. Oh my gosh, you're behind. You don't know this. You don't know. Yeah, because I'm not in there, really looking at, oh, let me see what you wrote. Let me see what you're reading. Let's see what you're doing. And so I don't want parents to feel like the victim anymore and just kind of sit back, because I do believe that parents, many of them, are doing what they can, right? Mm-hmm. But they're uninformed, right? Because they think, Jelani, get in there and do that math, do that work. And so I really was on my kid about it I
Got
do
it.
care. I told him to get in there and do that math. And it's like, but how does that help them with their skills? How
Okay.
does that help
Okay.
them with their, so I feel like parents don't understand that they're turning their kids off from math or reading or whatever it is.
Okay.
And you keep acting up, I'm gonna have you in there writing 2
I
papers,
see.
so it's like, how does that help me? Like, so writing's a punishment, right? It's not something to be fun or something to learn about, to express myself, so parents
Right.
are doing things to turn their kids off. They care, but they don't know what they're doing, right? And it's like, I ask you every day, did you have math work? Did you have work? You said no. And, I checked in. And it's like, well, actually, that's not a check-in. A check-in is more than that. So, this podcast is here to really educate parents who feel like they're trying. They thought they were doing what they're supposed to. They don't have the skills. They don't have the knowledge. They think they're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're doing it the wrong way. And it's actually the opposite outcome. Like, I don't want to do math. I don't want to do writing. All it is when I get in trouble, it's something boring. It's so.
And guess what?
This is what
Guess
the
what?
message is sent.
Guess what? I used to be that same parent. I used to be that same parent. Believe it or not, that's why. So, and I'm glad you said that, because I had the best of intentions.
Yes, of course.
My early methods were too intense.
Yes. Or you're going to sit here for the next 2 hours and we're going to get this math. We're going to get this reading. We're going to get that writing. And it's like,
and that is not how you
this is not, I don't want to do this. I hate this. I'm going to run. I'm going to act sleep. I'm going to act sick, whatever. So I don't have to do this.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now I can work with parents who have good intentions and just bad methodologies and bad methods. I can work with that parent. That parent they're making mistakes rooted in their good intentions.
Yeah.
So they have good intentions, but they're just too intense.
And I feel like I want to kind of challenge some of the things that you said, because I think that that's part of it too. Like, if I do whatever you were saying, I'm still not quite clear on what you're saying that parent is doing, right? Mm. But that's still part of it, right? I got the math person. I told you I'll pay you. And now, he doesn't want to work with me, or he feels like I'm not whatever. So it's like a misinterpretation, because I feel like that parent that's going to pay does care, but if they're not clear on what you want them to do or how you want them to approach it. And I've been saying for years, I'm not a math person. I don't do math. I can't do math. So I'm just going to give it to someone else. I'm paying you whatever amount, you need to take care of it. Right.
Okay. So,
and not understanding, like, no, I need you to be here. I need you to, so.
Okay. So what you're talking about is our methodology and our terminology. So if we teach you our methodology and our terminology, our methodology is rooted in, the first thing is you have to learn the golden rule. The golden rule of any Victory program, which is our nonprofit, or American Math or African Math. The first golden rule for every learner, meaning parent or educator, is this one golden rule. I'm going to challenge you to do this. You have to first learn how to teach your learners to love math. Mm. So
that's what we are, falling for learning, right? We're talking the same language.
So you need to I'm gonna challenge any parent and educator out there. Your homework is to go home and try to figure out how to teach children to love math. Okay. And if you can't figure that out, you can call us and we'll tell you the secret. If you can't figure out how to get a child to love math or you to love math, then that's where you need to stop. Because if instead of teaching a child to love math, if your methods are wrong, you'll teach a child to loathe math. And I know, because I've made the mistake in my research and development, and I've learned from my mistakes. And I learned that, like, for instance, some of the most proficient people in the world at mathematics are in Asia. But the math anxiety and the dislike of math in Asia is through the roof. And I think it's largely because of their methodologies. They're very proficient and very good. It's just that their methods they're too intense. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you have children committing suicide trying to compete in that environment.
Yes.
So I'm responding in a calmer and more toned down time, because we've gotten through, we gotten past the front door. And the only way you will get through the front door with me is that you have to love that child. See, some people aren't vested at all. And I can't work with them. But if I'm dealing with a parent or an educator who has the best of intentions, they just don't know how to teach, that's who I need to talk to. You can reach out to me, and I promise you I will give you methods. I promise you.
He just turned off again. But I'm so glad to hear this. I actually want to hear from Jelani because you are on the younger side. You're that first generation of this American math. And, I want you to talk about like a message that you have for parents as they're like learning and growing up. And, some perspective about what made you really start to like math and really buy into your education when you were younger.
Awesome, because I definitely was in that group of having a very well-meaning parent, but the methods were just too intense. I remember one of my earliest experiences with math is being frustrated at my little kiddie table trying to figure out a math puzzle, and I'm just looking at the symbols and I don't understand it, and I end up falling asleep there because I just don't get it.
Yes.
But the key is to, like Nkosi was saying, figure out how to make math fun. You need to figure out how to make games to apply it to in relevant ways that the child understands. And if the child doesn't understand it, you can't say the same thing to them again, but louder this time.
Yes.
And that's the importance of why we stress parent engagement. It's not even about saying that you don't care about your child enough, because in my spring semester, when I was teaching the group of children, I had kept on stressing to them and telling them to tell their parents that they need to have certain materials in order to partake in the class, right? That they needed to have their blocks, that they needed to have their books in order to make the most of the experience. But for somehow, children aren't coming to class with their materials, but the parents are still sending the students to me, expecting me to teach them and to have them to have beneficial outcomes. And it's their energy was more about the pride aspect of, I want my child to learn this advanced math because they're young. It's like, oh, they're young and they're super smart. I want to keep on feeding them more advanced classes because I want them to exceed and I want them to be the next young teenager going to Harvard. Instead of it being about, okay, do you really love this math? What do you want to do with it moving forward? And how can I help to nurture that energy and that growing passion inside of you? Right. So we've tried reaching out to parents to teach one-on-one courses and to teach their learners and to work with them. But if they don't have that passion to grow what's inside of their children, then we can't as well. And that's really, and I know it sounds like everything that Nkosi said, but that's really what's the most important part, is being able to sit down and work with your child and to do what needs to be done, to take out that time with them, to help them to better understand these concepts and to make it in a fun and inviting way.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was pretty much closing. So yeah.
Listen, parents, it's summertime. The days are flying by and you still haven't buckled down yet and provided learning activities for those babies. It's okay. I can help you out. All you have to do is go to www.tinyurl.com/learn10way. Learn the number 10 way. And I will give you our freebie in exchange for your email, 10 ways to squeeze learning fun into busy days. Don't let another day go by without providing fun learning activities that will give your child the competitive edge.
So I really want to kind of restate, because it sounded like you wanted a reframing, right? Not just that end goal of I want you to get to college and I want you to really, excel. Mm-hmm. But how are you continuing to engage the kid, make it relevant. Here's some fun activities, because we know the video games got our kids hooked, right? But thinking about that in the same way with math, like what can we do to get them hooked, to make it fun for them? And as a parent, promoting that fun, right? We were talking earlier about how we have that other extreme, like you better get in there and do that math, where it's like the opposite, like, oh, this is fun, let's come over here and do this math together, right? And rather than putting it on the kid and then making it something.
Methodology.
Yeah.
I have
terminology.
It's a twofold answer. Number one, we have a saying here at Bitrick that education is preparation for the next generation to inherit their nation. And that
say it one more time.
Education is preparation for the next generation to inherit their nation. So we also have another saying that is childhood is preparation for adulthood, right? So when you're trying to get your child engaged in math, start out I would advise, since the moment they're born, to start to see what it is that they enjoy doing and trying to encourage them to further fall in love with that, right? Like my little sister, for example, when she was a baby, she loved playing with boxes. We would buy her all these fancy toys from the toy store. Cardboard box from Costco was all she wanted, and she was content, right? And she would build little cardboard castles and play with her big brother in them and everything like that, right? So if you start to see your child really engage with this creation process this way, help to further encourage them by introducing them to math in these ways. So introduce them to a ruler as a tool to make a straight line when they're trying to make a window for their house. Or if they're graduating further ahead into robotics, start to introduce them to electricity and time, and just apply it to something that they're interested in.
That's brilliant.
Now, that leads into the second part of the topic, which is methodology and terminology. And that's what we help parents to find. Because I remember when I was younger, I had an interest in robotics, and I still do. I love making things with my hands and being involved with the creation process. So when I was around 12 years old, my parents, who were very well-meaning, got me this huge college textbook for robotics and engineering. And I learned about, I only made it through like the first 20 pages of it. That was impressive for me looking back. But it just wasn't organized in a way that was like, oh, this looks fun and inviting, and I can do this with other people, So we at American Math, instead of calling these activities work, we call them play. And instead of manipulatives, we use toys, so that and everything around the experience is catered to be enjoyable and to be entertaining. Because like you were saying, I was looking back at how much video games captivate the minds of our young people and how they can play a game for hours. And some of these games can be very technically taxing, right? And require hours to improve on, but they're just structured in a way where they're fun. So we at Bitrick more so consider ourselves a game development company than we do a curriculum development company. Wow. Because we build these games to just keep it so you sit down and you're addicted to it. I'm gonna close with this because in our recent American Math, the Foot Made Easy series, we use hexagon pattern blocks to calculate inches, so like triangles, rhombus, trapezoid, hexagon, so on and so forth. Whenever I sit down and start to play it, I start to get this feeling like I could do this forever. I know I can't, but before I know it, I'm 20 questions in, adding and subtracting inches and feet, and the time just flies by. So with the learners, it's always better to have them sit down with the math, have that same feeling, and feel bad needing to go away from it to something else, versus making it so that they loathe the experience and are looking forward to it ending. So that's our twofold answer on how you can start to implement these things into your child's life and to help them have a greater love and falling for learning. So yeah.
It's been so awesome talking to you all. What I feel like I'm missing from your like your business is that you have the American Math and then you have BITRIC, and they seem to be different. And BITRIC is like the parent component or the nonprofit component. And I feel like maybe you guys should have led with that or something. But please tell me the differences between like American Math and BITRIC.
Okay, so the reason we lead with American Math and African Math, like notice when I said African Math, it stimulated your interest.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell you what BITRIC is very significant, but it doesn't ring as something that's familiar. Okay, so BITRIC is the modern name of an ancient measurement system. Okay, have you ever heard of a measurement system or a unit of measure called the cubit?
Yeah, that's like biblical. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. So that was the actual unit of measurement. It was standardized unit of measurement throughout the ancient world. Okay. And it originated in Africa, in a place today that we call Egypt, but it was called.
Oh, you broke went black again.
Yeah. So
it's called what? It was
okay.
Egypt, but it's called what?
Okay. So the cubit system. So the cubit measurement system was actually standardized in a place that we today call Egypt, but in antiquity it was called ancient Kemet. And Kemet, some people say it means black land, but when we studied etymology and hieroglyphs, it meant black nation. So the cubit was a standard unit of measurement in ancient Africa for thousands of years. When the Greeks came into Kemet, it became Egypt for Egyptos, which means burnt face. So the Greeks changed Kemet from black nation to Egyptus or Egyptos, which means burnt face. But what people don't know is that Greeks occupied ancient Egypt for 300 to 400 years. So Greeks learned and had to utilize the ancient cubit system. Then after the Greeks were in ancient Egypt for 400 years, the Romans came in. The Romans came in and enslaved many Northern Africans. People don't know this, but they enslaved the indigenous population from Kemet and from Carthage and from Nubia. And when they became slaves, they had to take the knowledge that they had learned ancestrally for thousands of years, and they had to take it out into the Roman Empire to build an infrastructure. So the way we got the imperial system here in America is, I believe in the 1st century, Romans took enslaved Africans to Britain to build the roads and infrastructure projects. So we're talking about 1,500 years before Britain became a colonial power, because they didn't become a colonial power until like the 1500s. 1,500 years prior, Romans took enslaved Africans into Europe to build infrastructure projects, including Britain. So Britain's roadways are ancient. They're ancient, and they were built using the cubit. So that's why Britain uses the imperial system, even though they don't really know how to use it, because it wasn't created there. It was brought there to build the infrastructure. And that's why the learning institutions in America don't know how to use our measurement system, because it was not created here. It was brought here by enslaved African Americans. So the American math system is actually the ancient cubit system going back to ancient Egypt. And since it was called cubit, we decided to honor that measurement system by calling this system BITRIC. So it's also it's an honor and a continuance of that ancient measurement system, and it's also a complement to the metric system. Okay, so that's what BITRIC is. It took a lot of explaining, but it's also represents different place value systems, because America is multi-numeral, and we'll do that in professional development. I'll tell you more about how ancient civilizations did not just use one place value system. We use varying place value system.
And I would just like to chime in real quick about Bitrick, because American Math and African Math are not our only two programs. They're the ones that we're focusing most on right now and that have gotten the most development. But we also have programs like Girly Math, Alien Math, Mayan Math, Japanese Math, because of Egyptian Math, because we found through our study that math, like most of learning, is very culturally based, right? Everybody has a different way of tying their shoe or doing dishes or brushing your teeth. And you learn that from the culture that you're in. Somebody on the other side of the world in China is going to cook and do their day-to-day living differently than I would, right? And we found that that also transitions into math. So a program that might work great for a little boy who loves aliens might not be so good for a little girl who likes flowers and dresses and princesses. So we cater these different programs, teaching relatively the same material, but just packaged in different ways to these different groups so that it can be easier for them to learn.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much. And we want you to, I think you brought it up earlier, but I want us to be really clear. How can schools, families, and organizations find you, your website, your social medias, any upcoming events or anything like that? Please let us know.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
Okay, so our Instagram, you can find us on Instagram at American Math, and you can go to our website, americanmath.com. If you go to americanmath.com/help, you will find our math anxiety offer. So if you'd like to reach out to us to start to get a consultation on how we can help you and your school or in your family solve your child's math anxiety program, solve your child's math anxiety problem and help to create a program to get them on a track to continue, then go visit americanmath.com/help. You can also email us at help@americanmath.com or fill out the contact form on our website.
Wonderful. It's been really awesome talking to you, Mr. Jelani and Mr. Nkosi. I really look forward to seeing what you guys can do with the different groups of people that you are going to be impacting and hopefully turning around these negative outcomes, right, with whoever you work with. So
thank you very much. We're very happy to continue to work on this. And I'm sorry, I forgot. You can also check out our YouTube channel. It's called American Math. You should be able to find a link to it on our website as well. To some of our YouTube videos. So yes.
We will. Go ahead.
Sorry. We're very excited to move forward. We really look forward to working with everyone. And you can hear our passion. So we're definitely going to be working on this for years to come.
Wonderful. And I will definitely leave links when we post the video in YouTube and in the descriptions when it's on the different podcast platforms. Again, thank you so much for sharing this and taking on this work to change the math narrative that's going on in the communities throughout the United States. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again for joining us at the Falling for Learning podcast. We are here every week. Saturdays at 5 p.m. is when we drop our new episodes. Please listen in every week for those strategies and tips to keep you and the next generation on track for success. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com/@fall4learning. Again, that's youtube.com@fall4learning. We really appreciate you, and we are here on a mission to make sure that that next generation is on track for success and on track for learning. Thanks again. I'm TD Flinnaw. Have a wonderful week.